Hey, welcome back. Tonight's lesson we're going to build a pipe wrench. And it's been a little while since I modeled this, so I may stumble through a bit of this myself. I've created one a few years back and just created a couple of different iterations on here. I think we have 7 individual parts that we've got to create. Last week's lesson was a top-down type modeling or in context modeling. This is going to be from a bottom up, so we're going to model all of our parts and then assemble them. So in our assembly with this, one of the things that I want to change here is I'm probably going to add a configuration on this spring so these things will actually be able to be moved around where we can create different style assemblies in here by just a simple configuration on some of our mates. So we've got part 1, which is going to be the movable jaw, which is going to slide in and out. It's got a 15/16 Acme thread. We're probably not going to get too detailed with that. We're going to actually cut the thread on here, but I'm not going to worry too much about the thread profile. We'll just get something that looks visually okay, but not necessarily dimensionally accurate. Also, we got the adjustment screw, and it's going to also have a 15/16 by 5 Acme thread in it as well. The movable jaw, that's another pretty in detail type part. There's fairly simple if you break it down into smaller steps, but it's going to take multiple steps to get this done. We're going to try to keep everybody on pace with the way that we model it as well. So we got some details out here. We may forego one of the little screw holes in the top because I don't want to really put the spring in the top of it. We'll put the spring in the bottom. The other one that's pretty involved is going to be this the head itself, where everything is going to be assembled around. This is probably going to be the first part that we bring into our assembly, so we're probably going to start with part 4 on our assembly. The other stuff is just simple little pins that's going to retain our movable spring, and it also is going to hold our movable jaw inside of the head. So let's go ahead and get started with this, and we want to make sure that we're in SolidWorks and we are in inch settings. I've created a separate little view here where we see our dimensions pretty easily. It's going to be a few things that we want to kind of keep track of with this. We're looking at everything is coming off of this front face, so we have an inch back to where the teeth are going to start. I'm not too concerned with the 1 1/8 right here as of yet. We've got 6 inches overall, 2 1/4 in the height, and 1 1/4 on the radius here. And if you notice, this drawing is actually done, and it's using fractional tolerances in here. So this is probably, 1950s or a 60s model drawing, that we've got out there. So there may be some things that are done a little bit different than what we would do today, but we're going to work with it as best we can. So let's make sure that we got SolidWorks open, and we're going to go ahead and create a new part. We're going to verify that we are in inches. I look down here at the bottom right, and I am in inches. I want to start with an extruded boss base, and I want to start on the front plane. So I'm going to draw a relatively simple line here, one here, down, we'll say over, down, and over. Now we're going to need an arc that's out here. So let's come up and grab a 3-point arc. Select a 3-point arc here and here, and something along those lines. Now I'm going to want a little bit of reference geometry to make, or some reference material, so I'll make it easier for us selecting dimensions. So I'm just going to come up and select a center line, and I'm going to draw me a vertical center line somewhere along that size. And now I want to add a relation. So this make sure it's vertical, and then I want to select, and make sure you have your line selected. Doesn't matter what the number is, we just want to make sure we have this line selected and this arc selected, and we need to make it tangent. So that's going to make it a little bit easier for us to select these dimensions out here. Alright, so we know that this dimension out here, I think it said it was 15/16. It's 15 divided by 1/6. Let the computer do the math for us. So it is 15/16 on that. Okay, and then we got 1 inch here. I'm not too concerned with the 1 1/8 yet. 1 1/4, 2 1/4. Alright, so from here to here, was 2.25. Now my radius, I should have added a relation there, so let's add a relation. We want to pick this arc and that line and that arc. Let's make those two tangent. So now let's go ahead and continue with our dimensions from here to here. We want that to be 1. From here up, oh, I already have that one. And then we need an arc here, and that was 1.25. And now we are missing something. Oh, the overall length. So smart dimension. So I want to pick from here to this line, and we want it to be 6. So now we're fully defined. Now how wide was this part? So we want to come back to our drawing. It looks as if we are 13/16 or 0.8125. So let the computer do the math. So when we should still be in the features of extruded boss base. If not, go ahead and select extruded boss base. Now this is where I want to use the mid-plane feature just to keep everything symmetric. Now this was going to be 13 divided by 1/6, or 13 divided by 16 is 0.8125, and go ahead and accept it. Alright, so there's the beginnings of our jaw. Alright, so the next thing that I want to do, we can cut some teeth in it, and it looks like it's got a radius here, but I don't really know what that radius is. We'll just add something in that looks visually representative, and we can also cut these out on the top. Let's go ahead and cut the top out, and we'll cut our threads in first. Alright, so let's select extrude cut, and I'm going to pick this very top surface. I'm going to pick a line from here down and over, and I don't know how wide this thing was. It looks like this is a sectioned off view, so it says that we're 1/2 of an inch in width. So remember, we made our part symmetric, so we're going to come select a smart dimension, pick our origin, pick this line, and that's going to be 0.25, because 0.25 times 2 is going to be 1/2. There was also a dimension from here to here, and that was 1.125. Yep, 1 1/8, so 1.125. And now we're fully defined. So select features. I wasn't sure if I selected extruded cut or not before. I want to say I want it to go through all, and I want to make sure that my arrow is pointing up to remove this portion of material, and I accept it. And we now have part of our cut here. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to mirror this cut to the other side. Now this is why it's really good to have your parts symmetrically made to begin with. So we selected the front plane. I'm going to come pick mirror, select mirror, and now I'm going to expand my tree out, and I want to select the cut. So we now have that as well. Alright, so we have this kind of feature here. Now what I want to do is I have to create this round portion back here to where we can cut our threads on there. So let's select extruded cut. It's asking what face or plane. I'm going to pick the very back part of my part. I am going to draw me a center line in the very middle of this and go from here to the midpoint, and that line should be fully defined. Hit the escape key, and it is. Now I've got me a reference point out here that I can select a circle. Let's come up and pick the midpoint, pull this out, and we said that this was 15/16. 15 divided by 1/6, and we now have a circle here, so we can actually cut that radius down through here. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So we select features and extrude cut, rotate it around where we see. This was going to be 3 inches in depth, 3 inches. So we're going to say 3. Now it's going to cut the circle out of the middle of that unless we use this flip side to cut command. So I select flip side to cut, and it should just leave that radius on the outside of it. Alright, another thing that we want to do is we want to create a chamfer back here on the back, because we want a little bit of lead in when we get ready to cut our threads. So come up here to where your fillet command is, drop the chevron down, select chamfer. Let's make this maybe 0.125. 45 degrees is fine. I don't want to pick the entire face, but what I want to do is I want to pick this edge and this lower edge and then accept it. Alright, so now we have a chamfer here. Well, we need to put a circle out here so we can create a helix for our thread profile. So let's come up and select a sketch command. I want to pick this back. So we selected the sketch tab. I need to select the sketch command. Now it's going to ask us where we would like to place it. I want to place it on this very back face. I'm going to come and select another circle. Circle by center. I'm going to come tickle one of these edges and the center point should show up, and it does. So I'm going to pull out here and place it. Now, the size of this, I believe I want it to be on a tap drill is going to be 13/16 or 812.5. Alright, so we now have what our minor diameter of our threads are going to be. So that's 812.5 or 13 divided by 16. I accept that, so we're fully defined. Now what I want to do is I want to come up and use the drop down for the insert command, and then I want to use the curve, and then I want to select a helix. Alright, now on my helix I know that there's 5 threads per inch, so I'm going to come up here to where it says pitch. I'm going to select 1 divided by 5, it should be 0.2. Revolutions, if I go 15 it's going to be exactly 3. So I want to do 14.75. I'm going the wrong direction, so what I want to do is I want to reverse the direction. And now notice it says where my start angle is 180 degrees. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get that flipped up to a plane that we already have existing to us. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select this. I'm going to type in 90. So where my helix begins is 90 degrees from what origin that it selected for me. Alright, so what this will allow me to do is I can actually come in here and draw a sketch. The other part about it is I come out here and I take a look at where this part ends, and it doesn't end like in the middle of one of these, like in a body section. It's actually out here in the wide open. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and accept the helix command. Alright, so we now have a helix out here. We can adjust that because there's a sketch that it swallowed up, so we can change the size of it. Alright, so now I come up here. Remember, we started at 90 degrees instead of the 180, so we now have a reference plane that we can create a sketch on. So I'm going to come over here to where it says front plane, select it, flyout comes up, and now I can select a sketch. And I want to zoom way in on this side, and I'm going to draw a shape that looks kind of like an Acme thread. And alright, so I've got that, but it's really kind of all out of shape. So I'm going to put one more line here, and I'm going to go from midpoint to midpoint, and I want to pick that line, and I want it to be for construction, and I also want it to be vertical. Okay, so I'm going to give this some dimensions. So here on the bottom, let's make it 3 divided by 32 or 0.09375. Let's make it maybe 0.125 tall. And now we're going to need an angle in here. Let's just give it a 10-degree angle. Alright, so we've got everything tied up geometrically, but what we don't have is a location for this thing. So let's come up and we want to select Add Relations. I don't want to pick this point from that center line that we drew earlier. So I select that point, I select our sketch, and I want to add a pierce point. And it moves that down along to where we can sweep this along this path. Okay, so let's accept it. Now we can exit our sketch, and we'll come up to the features command, move your tab over, and now we can use the swept cut command. So we select a swept cut. Now I have sketch 5 still selected because I didn't get out of it or anything. So the next thing I want to do is I want to select the path that we want. So I'll select that path, and it looks like it's going to remove the material that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. So now we have a kind of Acme thread on here. Now notice the reason why I didn't go 15 turns is because it was going to get into here and we were going to run into a problem with it cutting into that right there. So we terminated it just a little bit shy. using my Control 7 command. This would be a good time to save this part after we've done something relatively complicated. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it the junk folder. Alright, so, and we said that this was part 1, so I'm going to call this mine J1, and we're ready to move on with the next portion of this. So this has got to have some teeth down here on the end of it. Alright, so dimension wise, we're looking at this. We've got a 1/16 over and an 1/8 of an inch up, and probably 8. It looks like an inch tall, so we'll have to pattern it 7 more times or 8 times. Alright, so let's select extruded cut. We want to pick this face here or the front plane, either one. And I want to draw a sketch down here along the bottom, and I'm going to start, say here, come up. I want to come over and then up and over again. So just something that looks like a little Z. Alright, so smart dimension, this vertical dimension was 0.125, and from here to this point was 0.06. And now this portion of it's fully defined. You can tell by it being black, and this portion is still blue. So let's go ahead and add a relation. And I want to make this line and this line equal. And then I want to give this a smart dimension from here to here of 0.125 as well. So we got that little shape here. Now we're ready to cut this thing through. So features, extruded cut. My arrow is pointing where it's going to remove all of this. Not what I want. I do want to say through all. And now this arrow, I can flip it here, or I can come over here and say flip side to cut. I want my arrow pointing here where it's going to remove those teeth. Now we're going to go ahead and accept that. Alright, so we have a tooth here. Now let's come up here and select a linear pattern. I want to pick this edge. I want to make sure my arrow is pointing uphill. These are supposed to be 0.125. And the feature that I want is this cut extrude. Let's go ahead and take it as well. Alright. Let's make our pattern. I want to edit my pattern. Let's make our quantity 8. Alright, so we should be an inch tall now. Control 7. I want to take a look at our drawing and find out what we're missing. Alright, so we've just got some visual aspects, you know, maybe a fillet radius here and a fillet radius here and one here, just to kind of get this thing smoothed out. Let's go ahead and add a couple of those. So select the fillet command. I'm going to make this maybe 0.125. I want to pick this face, and I want to pick, I'm sorry, not face, but edge. Pick this edge, and I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And then I want to select another fillet again, so fillet. I want to pick this edge, and maybe down along the bottom as well. Alright, so that just kind of softens our part quite a bit. Alright, so pretty happy with this particular part. Make sure that you got it named. Mine is named J1, and we're going to move on to the next part in our sequence. So we're looking at 15/16 internal acme thread. We got 1.25 inches in diameter. Looks like it's 11/16 in length. So let's go ahead and get started with this one. So we want to create a new part. Select extruded boss base. I want to use the front plane. I'm going to go ahead and pick a circle here, and I want to pick a circle here. Now remember, this is going to be an internal thread, so this is not going to be 15/16, but it's going to be the tap drill size, so it's going to be 13 divided by 16. And the outside diameter was 1.25 or 1.25. We can exit our sketch. I would like for this to be mid-plane, and it said it was 11/16. 11 divided by 1/6, or 0.6875, and we want to go ahead and accept that. Now we're going to have a little bit of a lead in here as well, so I want to pick a chamfer command. I want this to be maybe 0.125 again. Let's make it just a little bit larger than that. Let's make it 0.15. And now, I don't want to pick this edge and this edge. I'm just going to pick this face, and it's going to put one on both sides. Okay? So we now have this big chamfer in here, and we got to cut some threads in the middle of it. So we want to create another sketch. So I open up my sketch tab, I select sketch, and I pick this face. I'm going to pick a circle. And I think I want it to be 15 divided by 16. So we now have some material still here. I go ahead and accept that. And we want to insert a curve from curve again. So curve, helix. We're still 0.2, which our pitch is still the same. I don't really need 15 of them. Let's make this maybe 6. We started at 90 again, so we know that we can use our plane. So let's go ahead and accept this. And we can exit this sketch. Alright, so now we want to create another sketch. I'm going to select, I'm actually use the right plane. So select the right plane, little flyout comes up, select sketch, and we have something like this. Let's go ahead and draw our thread profile again. It's going to be a little bit backwards this time, so I'm going to pick here, 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 and here, and now I want to draw another line from midpoint to midpoint. I want it to be for construction, and I also am going to want it to be vertical. So I'm use my escape command, I select it, and I pick vertical. Alright, the way we had this before, smart dimension, 3 divided by 32. This dimension maybe 0.125. And our degree angle between the two, or in between, is going to be 10. And we want to add a relation. So I want to pick this, and I want to pierce that. Alright. I don't really like that. Let's delete that. Delete your pierce relation. What I want to do is I want to add a pierce relation. I want to pick this top point and our sketch, and I want to pierce it. Okay? Because I was really controlling something wrong right here. So let's go ahead and accept that. Taking a look at this. Am I going to cut it? I am going to cut something. So let's come up here to features. Oh, we got to exit our sketch first. So exit your sketch. We go to features, swept cut. The profile I want is that. The path that I want to take is our helix that we had earlier. We want to go ahead and accept it. And we now have this thread profile in the end of it. So this is going to be our second part, and I'm going to call it, so I'm going to say save, and this is going to be J2. So mine is junk 2, name yours whatever you need to name it. So control 7 and save it, so we now have our thread profile in here. Alright, so as we're looking at this, this is going to be our next part. This one is also pretty involved in creating it. You can't get too overwhelmed by that. We've got a taper down here, that our part is 10 7/8 long, so we've got a ways to go. So let's go ahead and create us a new part. So new part. Okay. We want to select extruded ball space on the front plane. I want to start on our point of origin, come out like this. I want to come up, over, I want to come out somewhere here. I want a radius here, come down at an angle, come over, up, and over. Now, I think that's right. Yeah, we can add this little fillet at the end of it. Alright, so let's add a relation. I want our origin and this bottom point, I want those two to be vertical. So smart dimension, it said that this was 7/8, so 7 divided by 8, or 0.875. The distance between here and here was 0.25. So we got 0.25 here, 7/8 here, 10 7/8 overall from there to there, minus 5 3/8. 1 1/4 tall and 9/16. So down here, 9 divided by 16, or 0.5625. Didn't see a radius here. I'm going to make this 0.25. Yeah, I don't see a radius, and it's 1 1/4 tall. So from here to here, 1.25. All right. So that gets most of this tied up, except we don't really have a length on here. All right. I can come from here to this outermost point. Let's actually draw us some reference geometry out here as well, just to make it easy like we did last time. So I'm just going to draw us a vertical center line here. I want to add a relation. I want to make this center line and this arc, I want to make those two tangent. And we could do some math here, but I'm really not interested in doing any math. We can make the computer do the math, but let's just go ahead and kind of keep things moving. All right, so I want to pick a line, command, come here. I want it to not be horizontal. Select here, come back in and tickle it, and then I can create another radius. I come around this way, click again, and I want to pull a line straight out along here. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to make this line and this line equal. This arc and this line, I'm not sure it's tangent. I know that the other one is. And now what I want to do is I want to make from, let's add another reference line back here just to kind of explain what's going on. So we pick a line here. And I want to add a relation between that line and this arc. I'd like to make it tangent. Okay, so now we've got a distance here that we can really and truly call these things out. So the distance here I think was 5 3/8, and this height back here was 3/4 of an inch, but we got a radius back here, so we got to cut that in half. All right, so smart dimension from here to here was 5 3/8, so 5.375. This distance was 0.375. So that gives us that taper. So that was the only two things that we really needed. Now the overall length of our part, I think, was 10 7/8. So we want to come back to our dimensions. We want to pick here, here, and that was going to be 10.875. I don't have an angle here, so I got to figure out what we got going on there. 7/16 along the top. No, that's not right. 1 1/2. So we go from here to here, and that was 1.5. So I want this to look a little something like that, but what have I got? What am I missing here? Oh, 3/16 from this edge to that corner right there. All right. So smart dimension from here to this point, 3/16 or 0.1875. We are now fully defined. The only thing we don't have defined is the endpoints of these reference lines. So I'm not real concerned about that. All right, so the thickness of this part, I think it was also 13/16, and I'm looking down through here. So yeah, right here tells us that we're 13/16 wide. So let's go ahead and extrude this out. So features, extrude. Let's go mid plane. I'm going to say 13 divided by 1/6 is going to be 812.5, and now we want to go ahead and accept it. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do, looks like we've got a cut here, 7/16, and our thickness of our part is going to be 1/2 of an inch wide. Let's go ahead and make that cut, and then we'll come back in and create our taper back here on the back, because it tapers down from our 1/2 inch to 3/8 at the very back. Alright, so extruded cut, I'm going to pick this face here. I'm just going to draw something like this, and then I'm going to draw something like this, even though I should have made that horizontal. Let's click on this line, make sure that you're horizontal. Now we want to add a couple relations, so add relations. I want this line and this back arc, I want those to be tangent. I want this line and this leading edge, I want those to be parallel. And now I want to use a smart dimension from this point to this point. It says that it was 7/16 or 0.4375. And now we can create our cut. So our cut was, our thickness, overall thickness of this portion of it was 7/16. So let's go ahead and make our cut. Extruded cut. I want to cut offset from a surface, and my surface that I want to select is going to be the front plane, and I want that to be 0.25 because I want it to be 1/2 inch total width when we're done. So I accept that. Alright, so now we got the beginnings of this. We want to mirror that command over to the other side. So I'm going to select my front plane, select my mirror command. It's asking what feature that I want. I want the cut, and we have that. Now the next thing that we've got is a taper that's back here. So let's go ahead and create that taper. Alright, so let's select the top plane. Flyout opens up, select sketch. I want to come up and pick a line command. I want to pick here, come out here to this back edge, select it, come down, select that. I want to come all the way back to where these two, that change happens. So let's make some relations. So we want to say add relations. This line is already selected. I picked this line. We want to make those two equal. Now I think I can do this with one dimension, so we select smart dimension. We know that we said the width was 0.375. Alright, so we're 0.375. We come down here, we are fully defined, and we want to create a cut. So select features, extruded cut. We want to say through all both. Make sure that your arrow is pointing out, and it is, and we accept that. Alright, so we now have our tapered portion of our handle. Alright, so we have a hole here, and I think I'm going to put this hole in the bottom. I don't think I want to put this hole in the top, and then we've got to create an indentation back here and a hole back here in the back. So let's go ahead and select, we'll create this hole here. So we got 11/32 over from this edge. It's 3/16, and it's also 1/4 inch down. Alright. So select extruded cut. I want to pick the front plane again. I want to pick a circle. Place a circle in this general area. I think we said it was 1364, so 13 divided by 64. Now we've got a dimension from here to the center of our circle of 11/32. 11 divided by 32 is 343. Now let's add a relation. Let's just call it by dimension. So we come over here, we place it down, and it's 0.25. So that hole is ready to be cut. So features, extruded cut, and we want to say through all because we don't have to think about it again. Reason why I don't have to think about it, I put it on the front plane, so I really should have said through all both. So I'm going to come back and edit my feature, and I want to say through all both, and now we have a cut here. So let's do the same thing. We've got a hole back here in the back of this where we can hang our tool up when we're done. So let's select extruded cut again. What face or plane? I'm going to expand my tree out. I want to select the front plane. I come up and select the circle by center again. I'm going to come tickle this back edge. My center point shows up. I place it here. I have to find what size this thing is. That hole is 1/4 inch, so we're going to smart dimension, place it here, and it's going to be 0.25. Alright, so we want to features, extruded cut, and we want it to be through all both as well. I still didn't select through all both. Again, edit, through all both. Alright, so now we have that. The next thing that I like to do is I like to put this spring retaining hole in the bottom of this. I'll look over here and it looks like we've got a number 31 drill, and the depth of that is going to be 0.38. So let's come down here and we want to use the hole wizard. We want a simple hole. We want to verify that it is a number 31. You can show your decimal values, which is 0.12. And now it's going to ask us where we would like to place this hole. I'm going to select positions. So what face do you want to put it on? I want to put it right here. Use my Control-8 command and make it normal to us. Flip mine backwards, but that's fine. I'll place it here. Now I want to add a relation, because we know that it's centered up. So that point and that point, let's make those two horizontal from one another. And then there was a dimension somewhere in here. Oh, I know what we can do that's different. We're going to take our view and we're going to show, let's show it with the wireframe with our hidden lines in here. Alright. So now I'm going to rotate this thing around, and we got a dimension up here somewhere. So we'll come over here, and it looks like that is in line with our other hole. So that's 11/32 from there. So I want to pick Smart Dimension. I'm using my Control-8 command to get everything back in alignment. I want to pick this edge and this, and I want it to be 1,1 divided by 3,2. And we've now put it centered up with that hole. So I accept it. Now our type, let's go back to our type for just a moment. So blind, we want to make sure that our end condition is blind, and we also want to make sure that it's 3/8 or 0.375 in depth. Don't want a near side countersink. Should give you your preview of what's going to go on here. So let's go ahead and accept that. And we now have a hole in here for our retaining pin. We also want to change back to shaded with edges. I'm going to use the Control-7 command, and now the next thing that we got to do is we got to put some teeth along the front of this thing. So come up here, we want to select, we're going to create an extruded cut, and then we're going to create another pattern. We also have to create an indentation here as well, it looks like. So we're pretty close to our second part. We're pretty deep into this at 40 minutes long. It seems like it's taking a little bit of time. So these things actually do take quite a bit of time. So let's select extruded cut. I'm going to pick this face here, or you can pick the front plane, either one. And same thing as what we've done before. I'm going to come over here, pick a regular line, start at this bottom vertex, come over like this, up, over, and up. So one extra line in here. Alright. So I've used my escape command to get us out of this. So let's add a relation. I want to pick my horizontal line and my horizontal line, and I want to make those two equal. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'll select something completely independent of those. I pick this angle line and this angle line, and I want to make those two equal as well. So we should be able to do this with 2 dimensions. So Smart Dimension, I'm going to pick my angle line, pull it out, make sure it pulls out horizontal, and that's going to be 0.125. And I'll pick this line here, and that's going to be 0.0625. Alright, so there's our beginning of our teeth. we want to go ahead and features and extruded cut, and let's select through all both or through all. Make sure that your arrow is going to take the material off that you want. You may have to flip it, so let's go ahead and accept it, and we now have some teeth here. Now we want to do select a linear pattern again. We want to go along this line. You don't want to pick a vertical line or anything, so we want to pick here, arrows pointing this direction. Size is going to be 0.125. I've got 7 here. I can't remember if we need a 7 or 8. So the features that we want, I could pick it over here, but I like picking it out of the manager tree. So I'll select the cut. 7 looks like it's going to be good. And now we've got all of our teeth, so Control 7. And now we need to put this indentation in here in the back. Alright, so we want to create another extruded cut. I don't want to pick this face here. What I do want to pick is this face, because I want a thickness across the back of this. I think it's 1/8 of an inch. It is 1/8 of an inch. Alright, so we're in this part. Let's go ahead and save this. I think, what part was this? This is part 3. Alright, so we're pretty deep into this. Kind of broke one of my rules, not saving it. So this is going to be J3. Alright, so we accept it. And now what I want to do is I want to create an extruded cut. I want to pick this face. I want to come select a circle. I'm going to tickle this area here. I want to place another circle out here. And now I want to draw 2 lines. Just make sure that they don't snap horizontal, or just let them not snap anywhere in particular. So now, use my escape command. I want to add a couple relations. So this one is centered up on this, so we can't really move it. But what I want to do is I want to pick the center of my circle and the center of my circle, and I want those two to be horizontal. Now, with that being said, I want to pick this line and this arc. I want it to be tangent. Next, I want to move to this line, this arc, tangent. This arc, this line, tangent. This line, this arc, tangent. Okay? So now let's trim some stuff off. So come up to trim. I like to use the trim closest to command, so I can just pick this, 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 and this. So I've got this slot looking shape. Okay? So we're ready to start dimensioning. So Smart Dimension, I want to pick this circle, this edge, sorry, I want to pick this edge, hold my shift key down, pick this circle, and I want it Smart Dimension. Let's try this again. I want to pick this edge, hold the shift key down, pick this circle. Why is it? And I want it to be 0.125. Alright, I want this to also be 0.125. Now, I did fail to add a relation. I want this arc and this line to be this and this to be parallel. And that should be all the dimensions that we're going to need and all the relations. So I failed to add a parallel relation between these two. So now we have this shape that we're going to cut some relief out of our handles. So we'll come up here to Features, Extruded Cut. Now this one goes in, it doesn't go in to that face, it actually goes into a certain web thickness in here. So we want to go offset from a surface, and that surface, we're going to expand this out, and I want it to be the front plane. I want it to be 0.125, and then I accept it. So now we're ready to mirror that across the other side. So we select Mirror. I'm going to use my front plane, and the feature is the last cut that we had, and we accept it as well. Now we come in here and start adding some fillets, but I'm not real concerned about those at the moment because this it's going to make this pretty long. So we want to make sure that we save our part and we move on to the next one. Alright, so as I'm looking at this, we've got part 1 done, we have part 2 complete, we have part 3 complete, and now let's move on to part 4. Alright, so we come over here to SolidWorks and we're going to make sure that we create a new part. We're going to create an extruded boss base on this front plane. As I'm looking at this, we're going to go 1/2 inch across the bottom, we're 2 3/4 up to the top of this 2 1/4 inch radius. We're 2 1/16 overall in the width. Come down 11/32 to the center of this radius. We have 3/4 of an inch here. Alright, let's get started. So pick a line. I'm going to come here, here, up, and now I need another line here, just something like that. Now I want to add a relation. So I've got nothing but the straight lines. So I want to pick this and this. I want to make those two horizontal from one another. Smart dimension. Pick this. Let's give this some size, and that was 0.5. Okay, so that's going to get everything kind of oriented size-wise. Now let's come up and select a 3-point arc. I want to pick here, here, and then place it. So that dimension was 2 1/4. So smart dimension 2.25, and then we had an overall height of this part of 2 3/4. So we come here, hold your shift key down, pick this arc, pull it out, place it, 2.75. Okay, and now we have a width of 2 1/16. So we're going to pick here, here, 2.0625. Okay, so now it looks like I've got an arc here, 3-point arc, got one here, and then I've got one from here to here. I want to add a relation. I want that arc and this to be tangent, and this line and this arc to be tangent as well. I don't know what that right there is. I'm just going to drag things around just to kind of get things shaped up. Okay, so looks like we're 3/4 of an inch here, and looks like we're 11/32 in to the center of that hole. Okay. So another thing I want is I want this center point. So let's add a relation. This center point of this arc here and this point here, let's make those two horizontal from one another. Now we can add a smart dimension, this, and that's 0.75 because it said it was 3/4, and then the distance from here to here was 11/32, so 11 divided by 32, and that's that shape there. Does it look right? Kind of looks right. I'm assuming it looks right. Alright, so we got that shape here. So let's exit our sketch. We should be in extrusion. The width of this is going to be 13/16. It doesn't make any sense. Sure. So we come back up here to this. We want to be mid-plane. 13 divided by 1/6, and we're good there. So now the next thing that we want to do is let's cut this in the back. All right, so we got 9/16 well, we got an 1/8 inch on both sides, which would end up being 9/16, and an 1/8 inch from the height, 1 1/8 radius of a half. That's clearance. Okay. All right. So we got 1/8 inch, 1/8 inch, 1 1/8. All right. So extruded cut. I want to pick this very back face. I'm going to come up and select a rectangle. I'm going to place it here. I want a smart dimension from here to here of 0.125. I'm going to do the same thing on this side because I really want this symmetric. 0.125, and this from here to the bottom, it was also 0.125. What was our height of that? 1 1/8. So that is going to be 1.125. Now I'm going to come up and grab a circle. I'm going to place a circle out here like this. I'm going to add a relation. Clear this out. I want the center point of this and the center point of this to be vertical from one another. I'm now going to pick a line. I'm going to draw me a line here. I'm going to draw me a line here. And smart dimension 1/2 inch. So that's going to be a 1 inch diameter circle. So this is 1. Now let's trim some stuff off. Let's add another relation. I want to make this line and this line collinear. This line collinear. And now let's trim some stuff off. Trim here, 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 and here. It still looks a little out of skew, so let's add another relation. Let's go back to these lines now that we've cut some things away. Pick those two. We want to make those two equal. Okay, so that should square some of that up. And now we need a distance between those two. So the distance to the center of that is going to be 5/8. So smart dimension from here to the center point, that's 0.625. And so that's the back side of that. So we want to go features, extruded cut, and we want it to be through all. So go ahead and accept it. So we now have the beginnings of that. Alright, so we got to cut a hole in here. So we got 1 3/8, 13/16, and it looks like it's 7/16 over. Alright, so we want to select extruded cut. We'll pick this face. Looks like it's just a simple rectangle. So we pick here. I think it said it was 1/3 divided by 1/6. From this edge to here was 7/16, or 0.4375. There's a height of this thing. No clue what it is. 1 3/8. And then 13/16 up from the bottom. So this is 1.375, and from here to here, that doesn't look right. 1 3/16. 1.1875. That looks a little better. All right, so come up to your features command, extruded cut. Make sure you cut it through all. So we have that. Now we got this face here. Let's see if we can get rid of that, because as I'm looking at my drawing, it really doesn't show anything there, but this is open right in here. We wouldn't be able to rotate our jaw, this movable, this the handle itself wouldn't be able to rotate up and down in there. So let's go ahead and work on this. So let's try a different command. So let's say insert, features, insert face, and delete. Alright, so I think we want to be on delete and patch. So I want to pick this face, make sure that you show in your preview so it looks like it's going to get rid of that. Go ahead and accept it. So now we got that piece that's gone. Looks like we got another hole that we have to cut in here. So we got a retaining pin hole, 11/32 over, it's centered up into that. So we've already determined the 11/32, so we got 13/64 that we need to put in here. Alright, so extruded cut. I want to pick this face here. I want to use a circle by center command. I come and tickle this radius, pick this, pull it out. Smart dimension, it was 13 divided by 64. And we want to exit our sketch, and our cut, we want it to be through all, and accept it. So I think we are now done with actually part 4. So this is part 4. I think we have everything on there. If not, we can always go back and make some adjustments. So the next 2 are extremely easy. Our next 3 are somewhat easy. We got a couple pins, and we got this piece of spring steel. This piece of spring steel, we're going to make a configuration out of it so we can create some assembly work. So this is going to be called number 4. So mine is going to be J4. So Control 7, Control S for save. This is going to be J4. Accept it, and now let's move on to our new piece. So we'll say new part and OK. And we want, so this is 4, so 5 is going to be our piece of spring steel. This is a little bit confusing, but we're going to add a configuration. Okay, so we got 1 3/4 and a 1/4 inch height, and it looks like it's 3/8 wide. Alright, so we want to select extruded ball space. We want the front plane. I'm going to pick a 3-point arc. I'm going to start here. I'm going to pull it out here, and I want it to look just a little like that. So smart dimension, from this point to this point is 1.75, and from this point to this point was 0.25. Now I want to draw me a reference line right here, so I want to pick a line and just pull it here. So what I want to do is I want to make this tangent with that line, with that reference line. Add a relation. I want to pick my arc. I want to pick my center line. I want to make it tangent. That should completely define it. So it's figured out where our 3 points are to determine this radius, because before I could just rotate this thing up or down. So let's go features, extrude, and this is going to be mid plane. It's going to be 0.375 wide. It said that it was a number 20 or 0.032 on thickness. So our thickness is 0.032, and we'll just go one side on that, and we're going to call that good. Okay, so now this is the height of our spring. So what I want to do is, no, let's not do that just yet. So let's create an extruded cut. I want it to be on the top plane. I want a line coming from this outer corner right here, down. I want to come back in here, and I want to create this radius. And then I want another line all the way to this corner. Okay? So let's add some relations. This and this, I want those to be tangent. Our origin and the center point of our arc, I want it to be horizontal. This edge, this arc, tangent. And now it looks like it's a 1/4 inch at the very end on the width. I really did this wrong. Display and delete relations. So I want to pick this, I want to delete that coincident, and I want to delete this coincident. Okay, so I should be able to move these. So now I want to drag this down to here, okay? Make sure that this one is also coincident here. Alright, so smart dimension, here and here, 0.25. So I had this a little bit backwards, so sorry about that. You could redraw this and kind of get that shape on there instead of deleting those. So now we want to create an extruded cut. I want it to be through all both. I want to make sure that I'm not cutting this, so I'm going to have to flip the side of mine and then accept it. Okay, so now we got something that looks a little bit like this. So the next thing that we want to do is an extruded cut, and I want it to be on the top plane again. I want to pick a circle, hover over the tickly edge of that, place a circle here. That circle is going to be 9/64 in diameter. So smart dimension, 9 divided by 64. And now we can select features, extruded cut, and let's make sure we go through all both again and accept it. So we now have a hole here. So this is our piece of spring steel. Alright, now what I want to do is when we get ready to assemble this, I want to use this where we can kind of put it in different orientations. So I'm going to come up and select configurations. I want to go and I want to add a configuration, and I'm going to call this assembly and accept it. So now we're no longer in the default, we are in the assembly configuration. I want to come back to my feature, my first extrusion. I want to edit that sketch. Now this dimension here is the one that I want to change. So I double click on it. Now notice I now have this little drop down beside it. I don't want it to be all configurations, I want it to be for this configuration. And now let's change this to say 0.1. Alright, so it's moved that. Verify that everything is still functioning. So now we're in the assembly. Let's go back to default and see how the two move around. So when we get ready to create our assembly, that's what we're looking for. I'm going to leave mine in assembly because we're going to make that different. So Control 7. Control S, and I think this was part 5, so I'm going to go J5 and move forward. Alright, so the next thing, these are our two easy ones. So we have a little small pin. It looks like it's 5/16 long. It's a number 6, which I think is 130, and then we got a 3/16 buffer, so it's 3/16. Alright, so let's worry about number 7. So the number 6 by 5/16. So we say new, part, OK, extruded boss base, top plane. We want a circle, pull it out here. That's going to be 0.13. We want to exit our sketch. We extrude it 5 divided by 1/6. Accept it. Now we want to create a little top on this thing, so we want to select extruded boss base. We want to pick this top surface. I want to come select a circle here, place it like this. Smart dimension, I think this is going to be 0.201. Sure. Exit our sketch, our extrusion, let's make it 0.01. So we now have something that looks like this. Wow, that's a big extrusion. Okay, 0.01. Alright, so let's add a new command that we haven't done before. So we're going to say insert, features, dome, pick this top surface. 0.1 is entirely too big. Let's make it 0.03, and we just now have a small little dome on the top of this thing. Okay, so Control 7, save this. I think it was part 6 for say junk. Mine is J6. Now the next one was virtually the same thing. It's going to be a 3/16 by 1 button head rivet. So new, part, OK. Extrusion here, on the top plane, we want to pick a circle, place it here, 3/16 or 0.1875, fully defined, exit our sketch. It was 1 inch long, accept it. We want to create another extrusion on the very top of this, so extruded boss face, pick your top surface, come select a circle, pick here, and I think this was 0.261. Exit your sketch, make the thickness 0.01, accept it. So you look kind of similar. Now we're going to go insert, features, dome. No, it's nil. So pick the top, and we said I think 0.03 before. Sure, 0.03 looks good. Control 7 and go ahead and save this as J7 or whatever part number you want. And now we're ready to create an assembly. So we've got all of our parts saved, and now we're going to start our bottom up assembling. So we want to create, so file, make assembly from part. Now I think J4 was the one that I'm going to select graphics preview. So when I drag this over here, I don't want to just place it out here on my very first part. I want my first part to be fixed and everything kind of move around that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my green check command. So I'm going to place J4 where I modeled it. Alright, so now I need to insert a component. So insert a component. J1 was the movable jaw. I'm just going to place it here. Okay. So now I'm ready to start mating this thing. So I can move this one anywhere I want to. I can't really move this one. It says the component's fixed. So let's come up to our mate command. We want to select a concentric mate. Now I'm going to pick one of these outside portions of our threads, and I'm going to pick the round portion of our jaw. So that gets this to where we can move it in here. It's going to stay centered up, but the problem is it'll rotate around. Okay, so that's one mate that we have. It shows that we have a concentricity mate or a concentric mate in here. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to expand my tree out. Now notice I have these parts and I have these planes here. I don't really want to use my assembly planes because it may become problematic later. So this is going to be centered up with this particular part. So J1 and J4 are related to one another. Those are the two that I want to keep oriented to each other. So I'm going to come down here and expand this out. I want to select the front plane of J4. Now I want to come expand J1 out, and I want the front plane on it as well. So notice it rotates that around. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and accept it. I now have two mates. I could apply a distance mate in here, but we'll worry about that. Let's go ahead and do that. So now we're going to say advanced mates. This is going to be a little bit different than what we've done before. So advanced mates, I want a distance mate. Now I'm going to pick this face and this face. So it now says that these two are 1 inch apart. So the maximum that I'm going to want those two apart is maybe 2, and the minimum I want them apart is maybe 0.125. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and accept it and accept it again, and now I'll verify that it's really what I'm looking for. So that's the distance that this thing will rotate or move. Looks like it's going to go in a little bit too far, but we can fix that later on. So we're not real worried about that at the moment. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put our adjustment screw in here. Now I think that was part 2. It is part 2. So let's come up to insert a component. We want to pick part 2, and I'm just going to place it out here somewhere. Alright, so let's select mate again. I'm going to go ahead and force concentric. I want to pick the outside of our drive nut and one of those outer threads and accept it. Now we're going to also go to another advanced mate because I want this thing centered up in here. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to drag it out, and we want to come down to advanced mates again. This time we're going to want symmetric. Alright, I'm going to minimize J1 and I'm going to expand out J2. Notice these two are like some seafoam type green, so that means that those two are associated right now. Now with J2, that's this part, I want to hover over the planes and I want to use my front plane as my symmetry plane. Okay, now it asked me what I want it symmetric about. I really want it always in the middle of this opening here. So the two faces that I want that plane symmetric with is going to be this face, and I rotate this around and I want this face as well. So that adjustment wheel is now located in there. So I'm going to go ahead and accept it. So the mates that I have is one's going to be concentric and one's going to be symmetric. All right. Another thing that I want to do is I want to create a mechanical mate with this. So I'm going to select mechanical mate, and then I'm going to pick screw, distance and revolutions. Let's just say 1, and now let's pick our 2 parts. Okay. So I want to pick this piece, and I want to pick this piece here, and it rotates around that way. I'm not real concerned if it's right or wrong. I just want to, so I go ahead and accept everything that I've got. We can always come back and fix those. We just want to make sure that things work. So when you rotate this adjustment screw, everything moves back and forth. Okay, Control 7. So now we've got this much going. We want to go ahead and save our assembly. So just hit your save button. So rebuild. I'm going to call it J1 wrench. Don't care what you call it. Just now's the time to name it what you need to. Okay. So we want to insert a component. So we've had part 4, part 1, part 2. So let's look at part 3, and that's what we have out here. Okay. So let's create a mate. So we placed it out here in the graphics area. Notice it says that it's not fixed or anything, and this one's got a negative sign. So select a mate. I want to pick the center of this hole here and this, and I want to pick the center of this hole. So we accept that. Now notice it's centered up in here, so it'll rotate around and move in and out, which is kind of what we're looking for. Right? It also shows the 2 that they're associated with. Now these are the 2 I want to expand out. So I'm going to expand this out, and I want to use my front plane on part 4, and I expand part 3 out, and I want to use the front plane on it as well. So now it's centered that up in here. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that and kind of rotate it around and just take a look at it. I'm just going to keep it to where we can move this thing around like this. So our pipe wrench is beginning to look a little bit more like a pipe wrench. Alright, so let's go ahead and accept that. How many parts do we have? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, so we're ready to start putting in the spring, I think. Yeah, spring is going to be part 5. So we want to insert a component. Drag 5 over here like this. Now I place it down, and then if I click on it, it's going to ask me what configuration I want. And remember, I've written down assembly, so that's really what I want in here. Okay. Now the problem is I brought it in and it's upside down. Really not what I want, but we can flip that. So let's come up and select mate. I want the center of this hole and the center of this hole. Now I really wanted it flipped, so right here it says flip mate alignment. So I'm going to flip the mate alignment and accept it, and now I can drag this thing around, do whatever I want to with it, but I'm not really ready for that yet. So the next thing I want to do is I want to pick this face and this face and accept it. Now it makes it a lot easier for me to control about moving it around. Okay, I say it does. Okay, so let's create another mate. I'm going to want this face and this edge. I may have to back up on these and bring this back in, because I've kind of got you backed up into a corner. So let's go ahead and kill these mates. I'm going to go ahead and accept them. Now, if I want to get rid of the mates, these are the last 3 that I did. This is the time to do it. So I'm going to delete that. Yes, I want to delete it. delete that. Yes, I want to delete it. I'm going to move this around here, okay? And delete this as well. So now I've got it kind of flipped. All right. I'm going to go ahead. So we select mate. I want the center of this and the center of this. Now, I'm going to expand this out, and I'm going to want part 3, I'm going to want the front plane, and then part 5, I'm going to want the front plane. But I'm going to want to flip those so it rotates it around, okay? So accept it. So you can't just give up on these things. And now the next thing that I want to do is I want to pick this face and then this face. Accept that as well. So now when I rotate this up like that, if I had my spring where it was just as big as it was earlier, it's going to force some things like I don't want them. Now the next mate that I'm going to want is this edge here and the face of our spring. So we now have that located in there. So I'm going to minimize all of these in my tree. And now this is kind of fixed, so I really can't move that thing around anymore, but that's kind of how that spring is going to be in there. So when you're using this pipe wrench, you'd actually press down on it and then figure out what size that you're going to need by adjusting your screw in or out. And now we're ready to put our 2 pins in here. So let's go ahead and insert a component. So J6 is next, and that's that little pin down here. So we want to mate this pin and this hole. Now I want to flip my mate alignment, so that made it a little bit easier. So we go ahead and we also are going to lock our rotation, and we accept that one. So the next mate that I want is this face and this face here. This face and that face, accept it. And now we got one more pin that we've got to put in here in our assembly to be complete. So we come up and we say insert component, and I think it was part number 7. So pick it, I'm going to place it here. We're going to select a mate. I want to pick this mate, and I want to pick this, accept it, but my pin is way in the middle of this thing, all the way on the other side. Don't be too concerned, I can just drag it out and then place it. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to mate this face of my pin and this face here, and accept it as well, and then accept it. Now J7, I forgot to do one thing. So I come and open it up, I look at the mates, I expand it out, and my concentric mate, I want to edit that. What I failed to do was lock the rotation. So lock the rotation, accept it, and now you are fully defined. So Control 7, make sure you save everything. Now the one part about this is you can't move this jaw, right? But our mates that we have in here, this little spring, remember we got all these mates, we don't know which one goes where. I mean, we can hover over and figure out what they are. So I'm going to minimize this, but I know that this part, so I pick on this part. So J5, I expand it out. Notice there's a neat little folder right here that tells me what mates are associated with it. And see this coincident? I'm going to pick it and I'm going to suppress it. Alright, so when I suppress it, I can actually take this and move this thing around like it would be, like you'd use it in real life. Even though our spring is not exactly what it should be, that's kind of how this thing is going to function. So you can still move these things in and out. So make sure that you put this thing in an isometric view. Go ahead and save everything out, and this is what you're going to submit to us in the learning management system. I know this was a little bit long and drawn out, but this kind of shows you how you're going to do some bottom-up modeling. And if you got into issues or whatever, you can just ask me any questions through via email on the YouTube video or through your learning management system. All right, we'll see you on the next one.